How many toilets were on Titanic? Such an interesting question. One I'm asked a lot, as a matter of fact. I think people ask me to test my knowledge, not because they really want to know, but they think they are being clever and that I am being snarky saying I researched Titanic. But for today's lesson, I want to share with everyone how the ship's lavatories and bathrooms functioned on Titanic and flesh away some of the odd myths that swirl around the topic. First, we need to go back before Titanic, back when everything in the world smelled really bad. That's right, the Victorian era. Plumbing and toilets and bathing back then were a different world than what it was today, and even for Titanic. One would hardly ever take a bath, and even if you were wealthy, it would be a lukewarm bath if you were lucky. Clothes were never washed because they were way too fancy. You didn't wash your hair if you had hair. The roads smelled bad because maids dumped chamber pots full of fluids out the windows. Rivers stunk. Cities stunk, the air stunk, your breath stunk, you stunk, I stink, your dog stinks, everything stinks. Thanks, Industrial Revolution. You hid all that stink with tons of perfume. But by the turn of the century, when internal plumbing and toilets started to be a bigger thing, people started to smell a bit better. Bathing improved and all sorts of new devices came out. A sponge bath would suffice, and you didn't need to bathe every day. So keep that in mind when you hear how few baths there were on board the ship. Now, speaking of ships, they were not a happy place to be back then. Full of sickness and disease and a long voyage, it was common for even death to occur because of it. It got so bad that the government of the United Kingdom passed laws to ensure that certain sanitary practices must be upheld. Now, usually when the government reaches their hands in, big companies push back, but the opposite happened. They advertised how wonderfully clean and safe these new facilities were, because it worked to brighten the image of the company. The public were frightened of germs and microbes and illnesses, and knowing that they wouldn't have to worry about it so much on their voyage could actually persuade them to sail. So, Titanic and Olympic's bathing facilities. What did they have? How did you bathe? How did you relieve yourself? Let's find out. The first myth about Titanic is that all first-class cabins had private bath. That's a falsehood. Only 2 cabins had totally private baths, and they were A36 and A37. Thomas Andrews' cabin and Father Brown's cabin. And Captain Smith's cabin. But the rest, even the suites, technically had to share with another cabin or 2 others. And then you had to pay to use those bathrooms or the door to the facilities would be locked. This was one of the main reasons why Olympic was retired in the 30s, lack of private baths. By that time, passengers required their own facilities, and Olympic couldn't make the adjustments. Britannic, however, would have private baths or showers and water closets for almost all her first-class cabins, so even by 1914, White Star knew it would be a requirement. So, what did you do if you had to go and you were in one of these cabins? Since second class and third had the same problem, no private bathrooms or toilets, there was a long-established system up to that time on how to use the facilities on ocean liners. There were a number of lavatories with many toilets and sinks provided around the passenger cabins, along with communal towels to dry your hands off. If you needed, you would just leave your cabin, find the proper lavvy, and do your business. You did not use the wash basin or folding lavatory that was provided in your stateroom. It was not designed for this. It was designed for hand washing and providing drinking water. The folding lavatories were compact and had a neat method for saving space. It drained water into a tank which a steward would dump every day. In first class, they were connected right to the ship's plumbing, but in second class, like the sinks in third class cabins aft, they had a tank above which a steward had to fill daily with fresh water. But let's say you're dirty, and you needed to take a bath and you weren't paying for a quote-unquote private bath. Then you make an arrangement with a bath steward, of course. This is what you would do in all 3 classes. Myth number 2, third class only had 2 bathrooms. True. However, they only had 2 bathtubs. They had plenty of lavatories for their many passengers, with deep sinks to clean up in. And like I mentioned in the beginning, this was a different time when people didn't bathe every day. Sometimes a quick scrub was all that was needed. But if you were a first or second class passenger and you wanted a nice bath, you arrange it with a steward and he sets a time for you. You were led to one of the bathrooms adjacent to the lavatory since they were all centered in the ship to make it easier for the piping, and you had a timed bath. It wasn't in a very luxurious space, but it was clean, comfortable, with all the latest amenities. The 2 big names for Titanic's toilets and tubs were Shanks and Dalton. They were so proud that they put their name right on the bowl of the toilets. You flushed them and no, the waste wasn't saved and reused somewhere in the ship. It wasn't stored and dumped when the ship got into port. Your flush, indeed, was just ejected along the side of the ship, right to the sea. As a matter of fact, third class had automatic flushing toilets, similar to the urinals. Not because they had fancier finishings than everyone else, but because for some steerage, this could be the first time they've ever encountered a toilet. There are horror stories from Olympic where stewards would have to clean up after male passengers who had no idea where to go or what to do in the middle of the night, since they were so used to using a hole in the ground, and simply did their business at the end of a dark corridor. But now, let's count up all the toilets. For the Project Titanic Outer Glory, I have to make a list of all the things. Here's my spreadsheet of all the bathrooms and their proper plumbing and fittings per deck, sinks, urinals, etc. There are multiple types of toilets and tubs depending on class and crew, of course. Like there was a shower tub combo in many of the private baths and the captain's bath. The tub on the boat deck of the wreck that gets so much attention lately is actually one of those combo shower tubs. But anyway, time for the big reveal. After looking at my plans of the ship, and there were a lot of plans out there, I'm using plans of Titanic which I consider to be OG plans. I will now let you know the results. 145 bathtubs, 297 sinks, 41 urinals, and a grand total of 285 toilets. So there you have it. I hope it was worth the wait. 285 toilets. I'm Matthew DeWinkler for Titanic University. Please like and subscribe and wash your damn hands.